if you're using trim mean inflation now that the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, is using, where I think he took it from the data from the Dallas Fed, inflation is at 2.4%. Does anyone of us believe that? Maybe not. Do we believe it's at 4%? Probably not. Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Corona, California. It is 10 p.m. Monday night on the West Coast. We are coming up on our nation's 250th celebration, July 4th. It's going to be a good weekend. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some news. It's a little sad. I've been reading a few articles over the weekend and even today. We had Kate Hoopingarner, who was on the marketing team at Guild. She passed away last week, and really sad. I think she was 31, and she was just popping her neck, like a lot of us do. And I read the Facebook post that her uncle put out. Thanks to James Kleiman for providing that link. Something we all do all the time. My 13-year-old daughter does it. It freaks me out. And then she had 2 neck injuries, playing flag football and in soccer. And so anyway, heart goes out to seeing a young colleague, who's out on the trade show circuits and goes to the different things out there and just, is part of our industry and gone too soon. So unfortunately, I think it popped her carotid artery and caused her to stroke out. So awful. Hats off to, Crispin blog and James Kleinman, and I saw a couple different places where it was posted. So thanks for shining some light on that. And our thoughts and prayers are with her family. Okay, let's get into the data. Let's talk about how everyone looks at data differently and how it means something different to anyone. Looking at a different time, looking for a different outcome. I will say one thing I've noticed about human nature is there's a lot of alarmism, especially if you read just the media in general, how, people react to change. And people don't like uncertainty. I talk a lot about uncertainty versus certainty, and the stock market loves certainty. Like when the earnings reports comes out and says that like NVIDIA or Micron or whoever is absolutely crushing it. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not responsible for your losses, only your profits on that one. But when there's uncertainty like a war in the Gulf or tariffs or the stock market selling off because of the war in the Gulf and tariffs, people don't like any of that stuff. And but I think ultimately, over time, math, science, data, and facts wins out. But you can always interpret it differently. So we're all going to have 3 Fed rate hikes this year, starting in July, because oil is up. Oil's at $70 a barrel. And even touch below that, actually. That doesn't mean it won't go back up. The Strait, for the most part, isn't really open for as much as we thought it would be, according to the Memorandum of Understanding. But there is some traffic flow, and you can see it's getting resolved. And, demand destruction happens when prices get too much. So it's jobs week. So one of the big important things about the jobs report, which normally comes out on the first Friday, which I think is coming out this Thursday, is hourly wages. So are our wages keeping up with inflation? And everyone talks about hourly wages, but the reality is you should really look at weekly wages, which nobody really looks at. I've been bringing it up to everyone. Hat tip to Mizuho, who does a good job of highlighting that. But it really smooths out the hourly wage. Like, people work a week, which includes overtime. People are working harder in this no hire, no fire environment. And overtime matters. So weekly wages is for sure keeping up with inflation. Of course, depends on what inflation you read. If you're using trim mean inflation now that the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, is using, where I think he took it from the data from the Dallas Fed, inflation is at 2.4%. Does anyone of us believe that? Maybe not. Do we believe it's at 4%? Probably not. The PCE that came out last week had something. There's something that no one really talked about, other than Mortgage News Daily. I saw an article and a link to AQ there, and Les Parker's TMS Spotlight. But Supercore strips out housing in addition to the food and energy that's stripped out for core. And so, it was up. It was up 0.5% month over month. The MBS Highway did a good job, which I got to see. Barry and Rosa and Tori at the Mortgage Mastermind last week. It was really cool, just stopping and chatting with my people. And you talk about these readings and what this data means and where you're going with core and PCE. A third of the core PCE going up was like stock market fees and so financial services. Well, does that really impact everybody? So is everyone going to take this high number at 3.4% because the stock prices, the stock market's up, and thus the fees we pay to stock brokers is up? Steve Scanlon from Rewire had a great mindset coaching session with him today. Who is in Italy right now. He did it from Italy. He's there. His wife is Sicilian. He's there tending to her and her family. He's a good man. And he sent me this article last week. I finally had a chance to read it. Here's kind of putting a little data, math, science, and facts on the point that the MBS Highway crew made. 58% of people own stocks, but 50% of the stock value held by U.S. individuals is held by the wealthiest 1%. And 87% is held by the wealthiest 10%. So is that something that should make us all go, oh, inflation's crazy, Fed rate hikes? You just got to dig into this stuff and look at it. And, I think you all should own stocks. I think it's a way to invest in great companies. In the long term, I think it's a good investment, especially if we think it's going to get harder to, for home affordability and seeing 1% home price appreciation, 2.5%, 3%. I don't know. There's so many different data points. It's generally a good bet. You're going to pay for a roof over your head. You might as well, instead of pay 100% interest rate to a landlord and make them rich. Speaking as one that's not a rich landlord, but I'm on the path. But put a roof over your own head. Make yourself wealthy. So all this data out there is crazy. Okay, I'm gonna put one more note on this. Mizuho wrote something pretty cool. I wrote down. So we believe the events of the coming weeks will, on balance, reduce fears of Fed rate hike in July, which I agree. So it's going to take time. If aggregate demand is strong enough to handle higher interest rates, particularly with further signs of labor market improvement and core inflation remaining elevated. Now, those could both come down. Remember the QCEW, the quarterly census of employment and wages? We get that number in August for the first quarter of this year. So the estimate I've heard anywhere from 100,000, 110,000, 115,000 jobs created this week on the June Bureau of Labor Statistics report. You remember last year when 900,000 jobs were wiped out like that? Remember all the data inside the jobs reports? There's this survey. They take estimates. It's dated. The new chair of Warsh even said it's dated. But how quickly can he assemble all the new data? He said by the end of the year. They got a task force for that, 5 of them to be exact. So we won't even get the new data really until the end of the year. So I don't know how much they're really going to make a move this year because they're rejiggering all the data that they get. So when the QCEW comes out, we're all going to freak out. All these, jobs are being created, and then all of a sudden, just kidding. We checked with all the states. There really aren't that many jobs. We made up those numbers when we did the birth-death model ratio for businesses growing versus businesses shutting down. Anyway, so Lisa Cook, her case was taken to the Supreme Court. She is a Fed member, and she now remember the way the Trump administration went at her at a time when they were trying to stack the board. I can't blame them for trying. Not saying it was the right way, but neither did the Supreme Court. That would turn for cause protection into little more than at-will employment. So she has to get due process. She has to go to court and have everything worked out to show that the cause was validated. So are they going to pursue her for fraud and prove it in court and then, go through all that stuff? So for cause, the Supreme Court said, they really need to we're not saying she can't be fired in the future. They're just saying, you have to actually prove your case. You can't just say, that's enough cause. So that was an interesting case. But, for cause versus at will, those are all legal terms. And speaking of legalese, there's a law pending out there, the Road Act. It's going to go into law. Don't know when. Don't know if it's going to get signed. I'm sure it will be. I'm sure the president will want to put his signature, his big old signature into this little thing, into law. One of the first 30 plus years we've had any kind of housing regulation legislation. So not sure if Congress is going to go into recess and he's not going to get his way on the Save America Act, the Voting Act. But who knows? It's politics. Never know. Never know what's going to happen. The Iran conflict. There was a strike. Then we struck their strikers, and then now it paused. Now they're going to meet in Doha. So oil is calm. 437 10-year Treasury. Who would have thunk that? Just a couple weeks ago. So. Alarmism is interesting. Uncertainty definitely gets people to freak out. And I think if you're conservative, remember that little amygdala or lizard brain? Is there a saber-toothed tiger around the corner? You see things go up, you assume the worst because you're protecting yourself. No fault there. Some of us like to go into battle, tip of the spear, and just face it, face the music. And it's not always as bad as it seems. Sometimes you just got to hit a bully right in the face. So hopefully rates will just stay in this area. Maybe they trend lower. No big deal. Not anchoring our mindset to that either. And I will try, although this week might be a little tough to get out my Thursday video. I don't do this for clicks or likes or follower count. There's a very select group right here that watches this, and I appreciate all of you. I had some great compliments of people who get a lot out of this, and didn't even say anything about PRMG. So have a good one. Cheers.
You've been listening to KP Talks Dollars and Cents, a top-rated show for those who want to learn about the economy and mortgage environment. Tune in each week for more episodes, and please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Kevin Perenio does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through KP Talks Dollars and Cents. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. For more info, follow KP Talks Dollars and Cents on all of our social channels.